We weren't owning it.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Behnke, and this is the Leadership Culture Podcast. I'm so excited today to talk to somebody who I'm just meeting for the first time, Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt's got an amazing background that I'm not going to try to read it for you. I just want to have Robert introduce himself. And we're going to be talking about accountability today, which I think is really easy to overlook in almost every context. But probably one of the most important factors in actually creating change and growth inside of people. So, Robert, super awesome to have you on today. Appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome today. I love talking about it because I think people misunderstand accountability. But what I do for a living is I create the opportunity for accountability. I've been running CEO peer groups for the last 12 years here in DFW. And the idea of a peer group is all these business owners who know how to run their business. They're smart, they're successful, but they come together and they get in a room and they say, hey, I want to be better. And so I'm going to tell you, this is what I'm going to do, or this is my struggle, or these are my problems. And I want to tell you, I want help, or I want to get better. And I'm creating a moment of accountability intentionally with people who actually they can be real with. And that's the whole beauty of accountability is it actually is really good. Some people hear the word accountability and they feel like it's a negative thing. I'm going to hold you accountable, like it's a threat.
Right.
But I've learned in my own life, and I've learned throughout these years of watching these business owners, those who do accountability win. They succeed at whatever they're working to do. It's hard. It's a lot of work, but they own it and they win. And so I just want people to get a grip on what accountability really is and not be freaked out about it.
Yeah, I love that. So I think that you're right. I think in my experience working with professionals, or actually anyone, is that the word accountability kind of leads people down this path of thinking, oh, I've done something I shouldn't do, or I have behavior that is like not good, so I need accountability to make sure I don't do the not good behavior. But truly, accountability should and can be applied to any kind of behavior or any kind of thinking or any kind of goal or next step or anything. So if you actually want to succeed in anything, then accountability is only going to foster that. I'm assuming that that's kind of your approach. Is that true? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's the whole point. If you really, really want something, create a world of accountability. In our own story, my beautiful wife, Kathy, and I, we were $90,000 in debt. That didn't include the house or the cars. And in 2019, it was killing us. And we just decided we're tired of living a life like this. And we looked at the problems, and the problem was us. We weren't owning it. I'd been in business doing my own thing since 2013, and it just never really got to where we could have the money we used to have when I had a job. And starting my own business was a slow and arduous process, but we still lived like I made a bunch of money. And so over time, it became a real problem. So in 2019, we were burdened with all this debt. I just looked there. I said, I'm not living the life I want anymore.
Right.
We got to do something. So instead of making excuses for why we couldn't do this or blaming the government or blaming God, we were mad at God for not fixing our problems. And we were fighting with each other and all these things. We can't do anything about it. We just said, look, that's it. Nobody cares if we're broke, unhappy with our marriage, angry at God, frustrated with life. We got to own this thing and do something about it. So we decided to sell our house, take the money from the sale of the house and pay off all our debt and start over. And that's what we did. And by March 20th of 2020, March 30th of 2020, we had sold the house, moved into this house that we rent today, and we paid off everything we owed and we started over. And the peace that we had was amazing. I had forgotten what it felt like to be in peace because I lived in stress for so long. Little bit by bit, I became overwhelmed and stressed, and that was normal. And it wasn't until I got down to a place where I wasn't in stress and worry and fear. How am I going to survive? How am I going to make payments? That I felt, oh my gosh, this is what life should feel like. So we learned that journey our own self firsthand, but I've also watched it with business owners for the last 12 years. Accountability is power and freedom and hope and joy and peace. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I have a question. So going through that process, once you decided to go, and make this very big decision. I think a lot of people might agree on paper they should do also, but might not be brave enough to pull the trigger on. So I want to hear, how did you employ accountability with that? But before that, what really popped into my head was there a period of detox that you kind of had to go through? I don't know of a better word, but a period of detox where you're just used to the rat race, for lack of a better phrase, for so long, and then all of a sudden you've kind of shifted everything, but like even physically, your body, everything, your mind, everything is like kind of expecting this regular rat race to happen. How is the actual transition? And then also, like, how does accountability fit into something that big of a decision?
Most everything stayed the same except the fact I didn't live in a really big, cool house. I lived in a tiny little rental house. That was the only
Okay.
difference. And then the stress and worry, but my business was the same. Everything, the only thing that was different in that was my confidence and my perspective on it. Hey, if you don't want to be in business with me, go away. I don't need you. I got no
Right.
debt. So my confidence as I approach situations, I'm an executive coach. And when I hear people say stuff, or they're frustrated, I don't want to lose them as a client. So maybe I
Totally.
won't say, well, gee, you're kind of being a jerk. I would say, well, let's take a look at options and let's think about
Yeah.
whatever these. And when I got to this place where I wasn't worried about losing any business because I didn't need any to survive, my
Right.
confidence was amazing. And so when I called people to be in our peer group, when I called them on the phone, I had no fear. My mind was free and focused. I was creative again. We lose creativity when we live a life of fear and worry.
Oh
I
yeah.
could, I could
Totally.
dream of new ideas and resources. So I think it just fueled me up to be more focused and better results. My business doubled. It doubled in 20 and it doubled again in 21.
Come on.
Whereas it had gone baby step for 6 years. In 2020, when the world was shutting down, I doubled my clients and I doubled it the next year because
Whoa.
I was free to make good decisions, to be
Yeah.
creative, and to be bold.
Yeah. I I love that. I think that sometimes it doesn't seem like it could be that big of a difference, but I definitely know what you're talking about where you, like, let's say you're working with the client and you need to tell them something really bold that's probably really offensive. They might literally just lose it, fire you on the spot, but it's the right thing for them actually.
Yeah.
And you know that on the other side of it, they're going to be way better off. And that's what your
Yes.
job is, to help them get to that spot. But if you absolutely can't lose them, then you actually can't deliver that to them the best service, because you can't take the risk. You can't afford to take the risk to tell them what they need to hear because
Yeah.
of the way they might react. And so you're saying, by kind of stepping out of that, you now had the strength, to the confidence and the ability to actually serve your clients better, which allowed you to grow even more. Is that true? Is that
Yeah,
what I'm
and when you experience one area of accountability and how free that is for you and how awesome that is, you will want it everywhere. Kathy and I started going to marriage counseling because we had really built up some things between us that we needed to get resolved. I
hearing?
looked at my weight. I had been the fattest I've ever been in my life. And I thought,
Yeah.
This is not how I want to live." Everything that I would make excuses for why I was doing this or saying I
Right.
can't do anything or blame something, it was all now up for grabs to just, what do you want it to look like? Why aren't you doing it? Own
Yeah.
it and go do it. And that just rippled into everything we looked at.
That is awesome. So as you went through this process, how did just the purposeful concept of accountability, how did that play a role as you kind of moved through these big decisions?
Accountability requires that you proactively do something towards the end of what you want.
Mm, yep.
Responsibility is just a knee jerk reaction to every problem that comes your way. And so when I started looking at what does it mean to be accountable, if I have a business, there are
Yeah.
parts of the business that I need to do that I proactively create as an accountable business owner. Instead of saying, well, that was another bad year, I guess I'll just do this. Or people aren't
Okay.
responding, I guess I just cut this back. You create what you hope to get out of it. So it was the mindset that I'm going to drive the behavior that I want to get the results I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
I owned it. I owned it all. And that really made me feel powerful. When you
Mhm.
take accountability for everything in your life, you gain the power to change anything in your life. And
Yeah.
so it's very freeing. It's very engaging.
Yeah. Oh, that's, man, that is so good. Okay. So let's transition a little bit for a minute. So a lot of what you do, what I'm hearing, is creating CEO peer groups, or peer groups of of high end leaders. Let's just say it like that. how do you help them recognize the need for accountability? Or does it come naturally? Or like, how do they respond to that?
No, they don't recognize it.
Yeah.
And most of us don't.
Yeah.
Most of us don't. Most of us think we're being accountable when we're just barely being responsible. And so what we do a lot of times is what we just have to do is say, okay, well, tell me what you want, and then tell me where you are. And they'll say, well, I want this, but I'm here. Okay, why? And then we've learned to recognize the traps. You either make excuse, blame, say you can't do anything about it, or you wait and hope. If you're doing any one of those four things, you are playing the role of a victim and you're not being accountable. And so when they say, well, sales isn't really bad. Okay, how come sales are bad? Well, we have a bad salesperson. Okay. And
what are we doing about it?
What? Instead of just blaming or making excuses or saying something, what could you do about that bad salesperson?
Yeah, totally.
We just started looking at everything in that light, and the simple definition of accountability is you own it. So if you got a bad salesperson, well, you own it. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I love that. I love the bluntness. I think that probably, well, actually, I don't know. You tell me, does that resonate well with people at the higher level CEO type, people with more experience?
It does. That's how they roll anyway. The little bit of ego problem was the challenge with this conversation. And so what I learned to do as an executive coach is I don't tell anyone what to do. I ask questions. Well, what do you want to do? Well, what else could you do? What have you tried before? Have you heard anything else other people do? And you keep asking questions and they go, oh, I should fire that guy, huh? Well, I mean, I don't know. It's your decision, but if you've told him to do this,
tell me.
So it moves out of the arrogance of, yeah, you got to fire that guy, to, hey, what would you like to do? Most of us know what we want to do. We're just not doing it.
Yeah.
And that's how you invite accountability, because people will go, well, how come you're not doing it? Now there's a little peer pressure to show up and play the game right.
Oh, I love that. So, that's super good. So I'm really curious about these CEO groups. So they meet monthly, weekly. How does that work?
Monthly. Yeah.
Monthly. So you're helping them come together, hold themselves accountable. I'm imagining, I don't know, tell me if this isn't true, but I'm imagining it's not just for their companies. It's like every part of their life, right?
Yeah, personal and professional, because if your marriage is in the toilet, you're showing up at work with a bad attitude.
Completely.
We look at all areas of our life. There's no separation between work and personal life, because you show up as you everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. So as you're helping them kind of reframe their mindset to one of accountability, I love what you said. I wrote it down. Most of us feel like we're being accountable when we're barely just being responsible. I love that. So as you're helping them with that, how do you help them transition that kind of new thinking to their employees? Like, how do you help employees actually think from a standpoint of accountability as well?
You need to teach this common language to all of your employees. It's like anything else you do as a culture. You've got to have this as a dialogue. And so you can't say, I'm going to hold everyone accountable. How? You can't hold anyone accountable. You can barely hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
What you want to do is you want to model it. You want to teach them to be aware of the traps. These are the 4 areas where you play a victim. When you're tempted to say, well, the traffic was really bad, or that customer never called me back, stop and say to yourself, nobody cares.
Right.
I need to do something about this. This is my thing.
That's right.
We create this conversation in your own brain. We're not saying to each other, hey, nobody cares. We're saying to ourselves, when we're about to play the victim role, don't say that. Say to yourself, nobody cares. You should have got here 2 hours early so traffic wasn't a factor. You should have driven to their office and knocked on the door and said, you owe us $20,000. You should have this. And so proactively, as employees or as leaders, we need to do the things that need to do so we own it, instead of playing as a victim. And when they do that long enough, it becomes a common language, and that you build a culture of accountability.
A culture of accountability. That sounds, now that we've been talking, that sounds amazing. But I feel like if you were to just go in without context and talk in a group of business people and said we need to create a culture of accountability, they'd probably be,
we are accountable. We are accountable. Everybody does everything all the time. No, they don't.
Yeah.
You're hitting every number, every forecast, every plan. You hit it every time.
Yeah. So help me with this part. So I think a lot of people would say, okay, if I want to create a culture of accountability in my organization, then that must mean that I have to get a list for every single employee of the 83 things that I got to go check up on, 2 times a day with every single person. They create this like rigorous micromanagement nightmare. So explain what actual accountability would look like inside of an organization.
See, that's babysitting. And you hired them because you expected them to show up and bring value.
Right.
And if they're going to be accountable to the thing you hired them for, you don't need to babysit and ask what they're doing. They need to drive themselves and say, okay, now when I was hired, they said, can you do this, this, and this? Yes. Can you do this? Yeah. Okay, great. Now come and be a part of our team. Then you got to work and you realize your supervisor's a jerk. The customers are horrible. It's really a challenge to do this. And so you pull back and you do the very least you have to do, which is your responsibility, where you show up, sit your butt in a cubicle, and I give you a paycheck. And that's what most people default to. But when you were hired, there was a vision of why you were coming here, and you need to own it. I was hired to bring change in the purchasing department. And even though my boss is a jerk and the customers are horrible and we don't have a good system, I am still accountable for the results that I should be driving. And as you start to teach this mindset to people, you don't need to babysit anybody. You just got to get out of their way and let them do their job.
Yeah. That is so, man, I love the way that you make it simple to see that this is obviously the right way to approach things, from a personal and professional. I love also how you're kind of talking about how there's not really a separation. Like, you show up as you everywhere that you are. I think that's really, it's very obvious. I think that the world has done this bad thing of kind of creating this illusion that's not true, that there's like different versions of you. There's not. You might,
some people do that.
You could try and compartmentalize them, but it's still you there. So it's a bit of a facade.
What happens when you try to show up as someone else? It's an internal struggle all day. And so you suppress, or you bring up a version of you that's not you. So the whole day you're stressed. And I got to go to work and be a jerk, or another one respects me, or no one gets any work done. Then this is an internal stress on you, and it shows.
Right. Totally. So I think, one of the things that will happen when people start listening to something like this, it could be happening with someone that's listening right now, is they're like, okay, I get what they're saying. I agree with these points that Robert's making, but I feel like if I was to go down this path, and I probably should, but I'm not sure how, because I already have too much on my plate. Like, this is going to for sure overwhelm. It's going to make it impossible for me. So how do you address that?
Right there, you were playing a victim role. You were just giving me all the excuses and all the reasons why you can't do something. You're right. If you want to have plenty of reasons to say why you can't do something, there's plenty to do. But the fact is, you have the opportunity to own it and do something about it. I get everything done that I really want to get done. The stuff I don't really care that much about, it doesn't get done. And I'm okay with that. So all you have to do is figure out, what do you want, and go prioritize that. And if you're spending your time jacking around babysitting your employees, or having meetings that go over the same thing over and over again, you need to create the idea that, no, we're going to be accountable as a team. I'm going to model it. I'm going to be accountable, and your team needs to do the same thing. And if not, they don't need to work there.
I love that. So talk about the modeling. So let's say a person leads an organization, or maybe a department or whatever, and they resonate with what we're saying, but they're not sure how they would model that in a way. Like, how do they do that with true authenticity? Like, how do they model that?
The best way to do it is to be vulnerable. Real accountability requires vulnerability, but leaders don't want to be vulnerable because they think people will think they're weak, or they'll take advantage of it, or they'll betray them. And so we put up a false front, and then nothing gets done. That's why these CEOs come and meet with me every month in a room where it's private, and they're all saying, I don't know how to do this, and I'm tired of this, and I'm frustrated here, and I got this worry. But they can talk freely because they have trust and they have privacy. Then they get ideas and solutions, and they go fix it. So at your company, if you want to build a culture of accountability, you got to be vulnerable yourself. And that way you say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hold myself accountable. Here's the goals for the company in writing. Here's the things that we're going to measure against. And I'm going to stand here every month and tell you what I'm doing to move that needle. And I'm going to model accountability for you guys to follow, but you're going to do the same thing too. You're going to come up with a plan that gets what I want to do accomplished from your area of responsibility, with the key metrics that you're going to measure along the way. And every month you're going to sit here in front of this whole room and tell us how your great results were, or you're going to ask for help along the way so you can get those numbers done before our next meeting. There's no showing up and going, well, I was busy, and the customer, no. Those are excuses. We don't have excuses here. You're going to own it. And if that means you got to get someone else to help you, you're going to drive it because you're responsible for the actions that will allow you to be accountable for the result.
Yeah, man, that is so good. It's perfect. So what I think I hear you saying is the way you create the culture is by modeling it with authenticity literally to the people, by actually doing it with them and showing them also how you're doing it with your own workload, with your own structure of things that you need to get done, with your own goals and objectives and things like that.
Well, one of the biggest reasons people aren't accountable is because the boss isn't accountable. And the boss doesn't want to declare what they're going to do, because then someone else could say, well, I thought we were doing this. Hey, mind your business. Don't worry about me. They want to be able to change their mind or not deliver on something. Well, you're creating a culture where everyone else does that. I thought we were going here. No, we're going here now. And you start to build a group of people who just think they can do whatever they want, and no one's ever going to make a big deal about it.
Right. So I guess as we're kind of thinking about this, what are some of the most common arguments, I guess? What are the most common forms of resistance that leaders see when they start to try and shift the culture of their organizations to a culture with accountability in mind? Like what are the ways that are commonly where resistance is commonly put forth, and then how do they deal with that?
The first one is that no one's really acknowledging that they're not being accountable. They would think that they are, and they're just, we're fine. We got, success breeds laziness. Because you're making money, everything's good. We don't have to have written policies and procedures or things that we do. We don't know. This is going to all work out fine. So until you first acknowledge that there is a lack of accountability, there's nothing going to get done.
Right.
And then if you're truly modeling it, then you give them the option. You have the opportunity to find real accountability through this organization, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But everyone who works here will. And then you have to do it. So when you say we're all going to do this and someone doesn't do that, you have to write them up. And if they don't do it again, then you write them up the second time and send them home without pay that day. And then the third time you write them up and walk them out the door. Now, until you start laying people off for not being accountable, no one's going to take you serious. I'm not suggesting you run around and fire everyone. I'm suggesting that you model the accountability that you want them to do, and you create a culture where that's how we live. And those people who don't want to be in that world will self-eliminate.
Yeah, I love that. That is super good. So you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but let's press in just a little bit more. So if you're going to engage your organization in this, your team members, the people that work for you or that you work with, because maybe you're in the middle of an organization, maybe you don't run it. How do you engage people through this? Is it just simply by modeling it, or are there like specific tactics that people can employ to engage with them?
It is harder if you're in the middle. I have a lot of clients I do coaching for their employees, and I work with them, and they'll have other parts of the team that aren't playing well. And they have to decide, do we go down to their level, or do we rise up to the level we want to be at? And I tell them, you're only working for you. For me, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. My faith is a big deal. So when I think about who I'm serving to please, it's the Lord. And I do my work the effort I put into it is because I want to please God for the life he's given me. Something has got to be your motivation. It could be money or power or just having a job that doesn't suck. And so you can be the one who says, in my team, in my area of responsibility, we're going to rock accountability. Now, no one's going to get mad. Hey, you're being awfully accountable. Settle down. But what they are going to do is say, hey, they're going to defend their own actions and try and avoid the accountability.
Absolutely.
But you could still own your job. And if someone isn't accountable that you have to work with, you go be accountable for whatever it takes to get your part done. They don't respond to you. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. You walk over and say, hey, I need this right now. And you do whatever it takes to do your job right.
Good.
And then eventually when your department's rocking way above everybody else, to be like, why are those guys in accounting so great? Well, they're owning it.
Yeah, they own it. They own it. I love that. So, Robert, this is fantastic. So you talk about the CEO groups, but you also mentioned that you do executive coaching. Like, do you help people with all different kinds of areas of leadership, or do you really focus on the accountability piece, or do you see that the accountability piece is kind of tied to all of the pieces?
Yeah, it's the underpinning of everything we do. You don't need a coach if you don't want to be accountable. Why does someone hire a trainer at the gym? I'm already paying membership. Why am I giving this guy money? Because if you don't show up, he's going to call your phone. Where are you? Get out of bed. Get over here.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
If I didn't need that, I wouldn't pay the guy, right? And so
Yeah, you can go on, watch YouTube videos on how to work out, but this person's going to call you and make sure that you're there at 10 a.m. for your meeting or whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't hold you accountable. They create the opportunity for you to be accountable, because you could lie and go, "Oh, I'm so sick," and they'll be like, "Okay, talk to you next week." Which you're not accountable at that moment, but they can create the opportunity for you to be accountable. So that's the whole point, is that we just have to create these moments where you want to be accountable because you see the results are awesome.
Yeah.
People who are accountable win. People who are accountable have joy in their lives. Other people are victims and they're miserable.
Yeah. I love that. I think you hit on something really, I think it's something really, really subtle, but super important, is that it's really, the personal trainer is not holding you accountable. They're creating a framework for you to hold yourself accountable.
Correct.
Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, that's correct. And no one can hold anyone accountable. You can only hold yourself accountable if you want to. And if you say, hey, I struggle with something, I'm going to make you my accountability partner. You call me every week and ask me how I'm doing. I could lie. You don't know.
Right.
So it doesn't do anything for me, but except it creates the opportunity for me to get better, because I want it bad enough that, yes, I know you're going to call me and I don't want to lie. So I'm going to have to get it done.
Yeah. I love that. So it's not about, accountability is not about somebody doing something to you. They're not like putting the accountability on you. It is that you're making a decision to hold yourself accountable, to be accountable, to create a culture of accountability, to foster this kind of mentality of accountability where you're purposefully choosing to do this. And then there's things that you can employ to help you with that, like someone to call, or a piece of software, or a checklist, or whatever. But ultimately, those are tools to help you. They're part of the framework, but you yourself have to actually do it. That's what I hear you saying. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah. And that's why we call the book Nobody Cares, because it's something you say to yourself every time you want to make some excuse or blame or say you can't or wait and hope. You just say to yourself, nobody cares unless I do. And when I care, I am going to go get it done.
Right. I love it. So you mentioned the book. So is that book? So I'm on your website. By the way, if you're listening to this and you have the ability to look at the show notes, you got to go to the show notes. You'll be able to find links to the website to learn more. But then also, here's the book, Break Free of the Limiting Stories That You Tell Yourself Nobody Cares. I absolutely love it. I see the shirt now. Nobody cares. Fantastic. So tell us about that. Tell us about that for a minute.
Well, we wrote this book in 22 because we really wanted people to understand what accountability is like. We tell stories that model these principles. We share a lot of vulnerable things. I talk about being $90,000 in debt. Salem, who's the co-author and a friend of mine, tells about how he tried to kill himself and nobody cared. He woke up the next morning, didn't even know where he was, and nobody knew about it, and nobody cared. And he realized, I got to own my own life. I can't wait for someone else to value me. Got to value myself. And so in this book, we outline the lies that people hold on to that keep them a victim. That moment of awareness where you say to yourself, nobody cares until I do. And then the journey to own it going forward, where you acknowledge the reality of where you're at. You embrace the suck, that it might suck to have to change this. You find a solution and you make it happen. Our solution was selling our house, and it sucked. But we wanted the life we wanted, and we were willing to go through that, because that tiny moment of sadness from September of 2019 to March of 2020 sucked.
Right.
But when we got out of debt and we started over and we owned it and we had peace, it was amazing.
Yeah. But you had to decide that in advance. It didn't just happen. You had to decide, you had to take action. That's also what I'm hearing you say is part of the accountability is you have to decide in advance, take purposeful action, and actually step into it.
Yeah.
Which is so awesome. Well, Robert, thank you for this. This is absolutely fantastic. If you're just listening to this, the website, what's the best place for people to find you, Robert? I should just ask you instead of looking.
Yeah, go to the website for the book. It's nobodycaresbook.com.
Okay.
And you can order the book there. You can take a free online assessment. We don't ask for your information. It's all private. Go there and score your life, your personal and your professional life, and then be honest with yourself. And if you're not happy with something, why? What are you going to do about it? And you'll see that you blame or make excuses or say, well, I can't do anything about that. Or I'll just wait and hope it gets better. I'll make minimum payments on my credit card for another couple of years, hoping that I get a big fat promotion someday. And it never comes. But anyway, you can go through the website there, learn all the principles, and take that assessment for free and start your own journey. If you want to dive in, you can buy the book from us. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Target and Walmart and all that stuff.
Awesome. That is so awesome. Well, so make sure you follow the links if you're just watching this. You can connect with Robert. There's a lot of great information on this website too. And then these peer groups, are they only in the Dallas area?
Yeah, they're only in DFW.
Okay, so if you're in that area and you are in any kind of leadership capacity, for sure check this out. But I'm imagining you do executive coaching for people all over. Is that true?
Yeah, I have some remote clients. Yeah, and I do that.
Awesome.
I spend most of my time working with the business owners. That's my passion and my focus.
Yeah.
But I do a good bit of coaching to support them.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's awesome. Well, Robert, anything else that you want to say to someone who maybe they're kind of resonating with this? They're realizing, you know what, I'm not really going to ever go anywhere if things continue the way that they are. It's probably time that I begin developing a culture of accountability. I'm not really sure, like, I don't know. And then it's, we're in a situation where it's very easy. There's so many distractions to just hear this, get mostly motivated, not make any changes. Then next week rolls along and you're just back to the races like normal. What would you say to people as we kind of wrap this up?
Just start by taking the satisfaction assessment and be honest. Really, when you go there's score where you are. Look at your marriage and go, when I got married, what did I think my life would be like? And where is it now? When I look at my health and my finances and my faith, when I used to think, or when I think of it now, compared to where I feel satisfied, be honest. And then based on your honest satisfaction, what are you going to do about it? Yeah. And it's at that moment you get to decide, look, nobody cares if I'm fat, broke, miserable in my marriage. Nobody cares unless I care enough to do something. And then find one area that you want to work on and just start working on that one. And if you need the skills to do it, get the book and use it as a tool. But I think most people understand the idea of owning it. Yeah. Yes. It's so good. Robert, thank you so much. This has been amazing. You guys, make sure to check out these resources. You owe it to yourself to think about this, really take a serious look at this, because one thing is for sure, we are entering a time in human history that is unlike anything else. And we really need people focused on the things that matter, the things that they're called to, what they're really on this earth to do. We need people really focused on that and doing it well. And this culture of accountability, all of the things that Robert's been talking about today are essential to that actually being able to take place. So definitely check out those resources, like and subscribe, follow us, and you can check out more about what we do and everything that we have at thechrisandprudence.com for all the things that we're doing inside of our ministry. But you guys, it's been amazing. Robert, thank you so much, and see you guys on the next one.